Hello, friends, and welcome back to another episode of College Football Game Day Live. We're almost at the end of the season. Last full college football Saturday of the year. Of course, next year it's segmented into the Friday and Saturday being Thanksgiving. So thank you for joining us for it. I am your host, Thor Nystrom, joined as always by my co-host, Mike Farrell of Mike Farrell Sports. For the next 90 minutes, Mike and I are going to be going through our best bets on today's card and taking your audience questions. If you subscribe, you're able to type those questions into the chat below. So just hit that subscribe button and start typing those questions. We'll get to them as we go. Only other favors we ask of you, hit that thumbs up button right now, right beneath our face, so we can get the word out that we're doing this. Helps us with the algorithm. And tell a college football degenerate friend of yours that we do this. Send them the link. Get them into the chat today. Mike, without further ado, let's get right into this. Let's start out with Michigan and Maryland. We started out with Michigan Penn State last week. Obviously, Michigan held serve in that one. Can they avoid the letdown, look ahead, dreaded spot here with Ohio State coming next weekend?
There's a lot of going on in Michigan, obviously. You've got the letdown situation. Maryland is not Penn State. Not that Penn State has accounted themselves very well against Michigan and Ohio State over the years, but that's a different story. And then you've got, a coach being fired yesterday. Harbaugh saying he's going to speak, then he doesn't speak. They accept the 3-game suspension. Harbaugh's still going to Maryland. He's going to be in a hotel someplace near the stadium. We don't really know what the heck we're going to see from Michigan. Last week we saw all runs in the second half. J.J. McCarthy, out there like Brock Purdy was in the playoff last year. Like, he wasn't injured, but why aren't they throwing the football? It screams towards the under, and that's where I'm leaning. But I'm going to take Maryland here. I just think that's, it's down to 18.5 live. It was 19. I just think that's too many points. I don't think Michigan's going to be able to be as sharp and focused as they need to be to blow this team out. They're going to win, and 10, 14 points is fine. But I'm taking Maryland to cover the 18.5 right now, but I'm leaning under as well. A lot of things, Michigan covers against Maryland. They're 6-1 against the spread against Maryland in the last 7 games. The total has gone over in 5 of Michigan's last 6 games and 4 of Maryland's last 5 games at home. But all of these circumstances are different now. So I think this is going to be a lower scoring game. I think you're going to see a lot of running the football. I think you're going to see Maryland try to get back into it, throwing it. But I think they can keep it close. So give me Maryland, and I would parlay the under. I like both those picks.
Your pick is the same as my lean, and my pick is the same as your lean. I do lean towards taking the points with Maryland for most of the reasons that you mentioned. Michigan looking forward to next week. But more than that, doing the thing that you were mentioning they did last week against Penn State, the thing that we noticed that they do in every game where they're blowing out. They just run in the second half. That's when Donovan Edwards gets his work, as the true running back in it. You try to shorten the thing and then get to the next game. In this one, you're particularly incentivized to do that. Obviously, a sandwich spot between the Penn State and the Ohio State game. The other thing is 16-mile-per-hour winds today. Speaking to the under thing, which is my play, under 49.5 is what I prefer. But I would lean towards taking the points as well. Maryland's offense has been in the tank for a month now. Running up against Michigan's defense, you wouldn't expect the Terps to do very much there. And again, I only expect Michigan to play offense in the first half. In the second half, I just expect run. And just the last point about the spot, the game before Michigan plays Ohio State every single year, I'll shout out Action Network is where I found this one. Michigan and Ohio State, 12, 21, and 1. That's 36.4% against the spread the week before Michigan, Ohio State since 2005. There's something to this. Lean Maryland, but I'll take the under. Mike and I more or less agree on this one. Mike, moving to our next one, ACC game with a noon kickoff. Miami hosting Louisville. Is this a game where Miami can get off the mat, or does Louisville and Jeff Brom's surge in year one continue?
Well, it's definitely a weird line. It's one of those fishy ones where does somebody know something that we don't know? I mean, Miami only getting 1 point against a top 25 team, top 15 team in Louisville. Miami not looking that good. Obviously back to Van Dyke after the injury to Emory Williams. Miami's just has struggled ever since that stupid Georgia Tech no kneel game. They really don't have any business thinking that they should be able to win this football game. But I don't think people trust Louisville. Kind of like last week where people didn't trust, Missouri. People aren't really sure about Louisville. First year coach. They're good, but how good are they? A lot of people saw the Notre Dame game and they're just like, what's going on here? But Miami's not good. They're just not a good football team. They've got some talent. It's going to take Cristobal a few years to get that going. There's some talks about potentially another offensive coordinator change, which I would be really surprised at. And those are just rumors. But to me, I'm just going to say blindly, I'm going to take this low line. I'm going to lay 1 point. Louisville's 4-2 against the spread in their last 6 games against Miami. They do well against Miami, even when they don't have great football teams. So I'm going to lay the 1 point and take Louisville here, even though this is a complete trap line.
Yeah, we agreed on the last one. We disagree on this one. I'm going to take. Oh, I looked this morning. It's actually moved to Miami -1, so we've crossed the threshold. So I'll lay the one with Miami, and I'll give you credit, Mike, of getting the one with Louisville on yours. If we're going heads up on this one, Louisville, of course, 9-1, but their only good win all season, it was that game against Notre Dame. I mean, it's the only top 25, top 30 kind of qualitative team that they've beaten this year, and that was in an all-time spot for them, or an all-time bad spot for Notre Dame, if you want to put it that way. I also think Miami matches up really well in this game. Louisville, their kryptonite is they have a leaky offensive line this year. Jawar Jordan has ran the ball very well. They have receiving talent, and Jack Plummer more or less has played pretty solid, but they've done so despite getting around that leaky offensive line. They play down when they play teams that have the better pass rushes. They haven't had to play a ton of those kinds of teams. Pittsburgh was one of them, by the way, one of the very few teams that had the good defensive front, could muck up the run a little bit. And of course, that was the game they lost. Miami, that is where their strength is. Very good defensive front. They shut down the run, and then they have the really good pass rush. So I think they're going to be teeing off against Plummer, particularly because I think they can keep Louisville off schedule by slowing down that running game and taking away the explosive runs of Jawar Jordan, especially because Jawar Jordan is also banged up. So is Jamari Thrash, by the way, so that could play down the passing game as well. Plummer is going to be sitting back there in the pocket. You're going to have a bunch of guys coming after him. Lance Guidry loves to call the blitz. So that leaky offensive line, I don't know if it can hold up. Tyler Van Dyke, that is the thing, Mike, of course. It's scary to have to back Tyler Van Dyke after some of these games that we've watched of him. But I think Miami's defense and their special teams, they have a huge special teams advantage in this game as well. I think that's going to put Van Dyke in advantageous enough spots where I'm hoping that Tyler Van Dyke does not give the game away, or Mario Cristobal doesn't give the game away for me. And the last point I'll make about that one other key injury on the Louisville side, their top cornerback, Jarvis Brownlee's been out for a couple weeks. Looks like he's going to miss this one as well. So maybe some of those balls that Tyler Van Dyke throws up, maybe they're not quite as likely to get turned around with Brownlee out of the lineup.
It's +1, Miami. So you had mentioned it.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'll take the one back then, Mike. So you lay the one and I'll take the one. But yeah, that thing's been going across the threshold. Right before we got on the consensus line on Betting Pros, it looked like it had flipped the other way, but maybe the market's playing some, batting that thing across the tennis net. Mike, our last noon game of the day, of course, the Kansas Jayhawks are playing today, so you knew I had to get them on the sheet. They're hosting Kansas State in a game that would have been a marquee game, would have been a game I was crazy excited for today, except for the fact that it appears Jason Bean may not play. Jason Bean, of course, Kansas' backup quarterback, who's played pretty solid over the past month plus, taking over for Jalen Daniels. Jason Bean gets a concussion last week against Texas Tech. Was one of the reasons Kansas ends up losing, that big reason they end up losing 16-13. If indeed Jason Bean cannot play, and Kansas is doing the whole game time decision thing, but everything that has been whispered to me this week is he's not a game time decision. Jason Bean's not playing. So I think it would take a sort of a miracle here at the 11th hour for Jason Bean to be playing no matter what Kansas is saying publicly. And if he doesn't, that would mean that Cole Ballard, the third string quarterback, is going to play. The son of the Indianapolis Colts GM, Chris Ballard, which is a cool story. But Cole Ballard finished 9 of 20 last week against Texas Tech. Didn't have a big time throw from PFF. He was also pressured on nearly half of his dropbacks. So that gets tough. He's not as mobile as Jason Bean. Could be a complicating factor in this one. Mike, this line now has moved up to 10 here in the last 24 hours, as I believe some of the sharks in the waters of the market have been hearing the same whispers I am that Jason Bean will not play, pushing this thing from 8 to 10. But how do you see this game?
Yeah, and it was announced again, as you know, it's a game time decision, going to see how he is in warm ups and all that stuff. So even if he plays, he's not going to be 100%. Kansas State is a really, really good football team. They've had some puzzling losses. They obviously disappointed me greatly against Oklahoma State earlier this season, and then they sort of fell off them. But, a well-coached team. Your guy, Chris Kleiman, not your guy, of course, because your guy can't, but being mentioned for the Texas A&M job. Really a great coach. That being said, 10's a lot. I'm going to go Kansas State here because of the Bean situation, because of the potential injury, or the fact that he's not going to be 100%. I'm gonna go Kansas State to cover that 10. I might even, take the precipitous negative of the money line, because I really don't see a way Kansas can win this football game with Bean out. But give me Kansas State laying 10. And then maybe offset that by putting a big number on the money line, and just, I don't know what it is. I can't even find this game. Did they pull it off? I mean, what's
we
I can't find it.
is that what happened?
Am I blind? I mean, you said it's 1:00. Your time's different than mine. I mean, is it 1:00 Eastern time? What time is this game?
Yeah. Did they well, if they yanked it, that means that maybe there was some news here.
I do not see it. Maybe I'm
let's see if I can find it on my books open.
Looking, and maybe.
Okay, so I do see it on one of the offshore books that I have. On that one, I'm seeing Kansas plus 10 and minus 113 juice live right now.
Yeah, it's just in DraftKings, unless I'm blind, and not for nothing, maybe there is a way that this has been done on DraftKings and stuff like that. But if there's not, can't you toggle by conference? Can you do that?
Let's put it in this. Let's drop in the suggestion box.
My goodness. I mean, just give me a drop down so I could just click on, Big 12, and then I could see if I'm going blind or not. I don't understand how that's not an option. So I don't see it though. So it's probably going to pop back up. But right now it's not on there. I'm still going Kansas State. The reason I was looking for it more so was, to see prop action, but I can't find it at all. At least on DraftKings, I can't find it.
I have a lot of suggestions for the sports books too. So maybe we'll have an off-season episode, Mike, where we just have an hour. We just go tell sports books things they need to do.
So many things they could do better. I mean,
so many things they could do.
Kind of hard.
Yeah, but we digress for now. I as much as I hate to, and Mike, you see my outfit today. You guys out there see my outfit. I'm wearing this out of guilt because I gotta lay it with Kansas State today. I hate to do it with my, against my beloved Kansas Jayhawks, but I watch every Kansas game. Obviously, I have for decades now. I watch Cole Ballard. It's a cool story, but I watched him against Texas Tech, and I know it's a hard thing, right? Like Bean gets injured in the middle of the game, and then you're throwing this true freshman walk-on out there cold against a Texas Tech defense in a very close game, and you're like, win us the game. We're 7-2. Win us the game so we can stay in the Big 12 race. Tough proposition, but Ballard didn't play very well, and he doesn't move around very well. And so because of that, and, ostensibly doesn't know the playbook as well as Jason Bean, who's been there for 3 years now. So Jalen Daniels, 3 or 4 years now. Because of all that different stuff, you couldn't do the bootleg stuff with them. You can't do a lot of the misdirection stuff that they do, getting them outside of the pocket, whatnot. You make them a sitting duck. Not only that, you neuter part of the playbook and the philosophy of the Kansas offensive coordinator, who I still can't pronounce his last name. I don't even try. It's alphabet soup. But, a very creative offensive play caller, but a lot of his creativity gets taken away just by the quarterback who is in. That means that Kansas State will more or less be able to zero in on Devin Neal and Daniel Highshaw, the Kansas running backs. That makes this one a really tough proposition. Even at 10, I think I got to lay it. Certainly, if you get less than 10, Kansas State would be even more confident in that. I don't like the Jayhawks today, unfortunately.
They own Kansas too. I mean, as you know, they own them. So
except the Josh Freeman game back in the day, Mike, I was at that one because I was an undergrad. We kicked the what out of Kansas State that day.
You're not allowed to mention Josh Freeman when there's Nebraska fans on the podcast. And
That was a great day in Lawrence, Mike. We threw those goalposts in Potter Lake. There's a lot of goalposts in Potter Lake.
dude, that must have been like 2006.
Oh yeah, getting
That's
old now.
a long time ago. So 10-0 straight up in their last 10 games, 4-1 against the spread in the last 5 games against Kansas. They always play them well. This isn't really a great rivalry. It's kind of one-sided. So we agree, Kansas.
We agree. We agree. Everyone out there, download the free Betting Pros app for iOS and Android if you have not already. The app is great. Mike and I both love it. You can track your picks. You get custom analytics on those. You get line movement alerts when you set it for that. You can follow experts, set your notifications so you get alerts when those folks make their bets. Head on over to bettingpros.com/apps to start setting your line alerts and download the Betting Pros app in the iTunes or Google Play stores today. 2 other favors before we move on. If you haven't hit that thumbs up button right beneath our faces, please do it. Helps us with the algorithm. And also, please hit subscribe. It literally allows you to type questions into the chat, which we are about to get to now. Open the mailbag for the first time. But if you're not a subscriber, hit that thing so you can start asking us questions as well. Mike, let's get into today's mailbag. Jordan Onke starts us out. Best show in college football. Thank you so much, Jordan. Let's have a great day, folks. Does TCU cover plus a Bailey TD? Mike, what do you think about TCU today?
I don't know. Maybe, yeah, I think they cover. I mean, Baylor's just awful. That ship has sailed. I think Aranda could be the next defensive coordinator at USC, more likely than the head coach at Baylor after this season. It just hasn't worked out well. He got off to a good start, but things aren't going that well. I think the team has kind of given up a little bit. So I would take TCU in this one.
We got a line still of, is it still under 2 touchdowns, 13.5?
Let me see.
If it's under 2 touchdowns, I'm with you, Mike. I would go with TCU in that one. And TCU, a team, they're still playing for something. I mean, we'll see, but they need to win here to have any hopes. 4-6, so you can still rally your way into bowl season. My line on this game is TCU minus 15.4. So I definitely lean that way. Baylor's shot, Baylor's quit. And then like Mike's mentioning, Dave Aranda's name has weirdly been tossed out for other head coaching jobs. And it's like, if you guys watched what Dave Aranda's done this year, the team stinks.
Anymore. Now he's a coordinator candidate.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, I've seen him as a defensive coordinator candidate.
Oh, gosh. Does that mean, well, that doesn't mean he's going to.
Well, also, LSU fans want them to fire their guy and go with him as their defensive coordinator. So it's the bad situation where you're a head football coach and you are being mentioned for coordinator jobs. That means you're in trouble.
Yeah, that does mean you're in trouble, and justifiably so, by the way. Dave Aranda, he was really good at the beginning of his tenure there when it was Matt Rule's players. Matt Rule had stocked the cupboard, and what Dave Aranda is really good at, it's looking at the guys on defense and like, this guy's skill set, I can plug him into this in my system, this guy this, but he needs those guys given to him. He, the Bill Parcells quote about like, if you're going to ask me to cook the meal, let me buy the groceries. For Dave Aranda, someone else should be buying him the groceries. Just let him cook. Keep them in the kitchen, to extend that metaphor.
I found the Kansas State game. It's 7:00. I was looking for an after game. How dare you?
We need sliders for the times as well, Mike.
It's up
another for the Dropbox.
And the sheet is like 12 or 1 o'clock. This is the game you're going to be watching more than any other game tonight. It's 7:00. It's 10. So I'm still taking Kansas State to cover 10. Until
Kansas State jumps out to a 20-0 lead, and that Ballard kid's throwing 3 interceptions, and then it will be a click, and I'll be throwing this sweatshirt on the floor, and yeah.
I mean, it could get really ugly. I think Lance is a good enough coach to try to keep it, and he's going to game plan properly to try to keep this respectable, but this could get really ugly.
Mike Huseman asks us, Jacksonville State and the Fighting Rich Rods. Oh, and by the way, I would go take the Emily Bailey touchdown, by the way, to wrap that up, Jordan. Thanks for the question. Mike Huseman asks us, Jacksonville State and the Fighting Rich Rods are -9 at home against Louisiana Tech today. Do you guys like a side in this one or the over-under at 54.5? What do you think, Mike?
Give me the Rich Rods. They've been playing very well. He's obviously a terrific coach. I think he might get one more shot at being a Power 5 coach, which would be interesting. Obviously the Michigan situation wasn't a fit. West Virginia, he was amazing. Bring him back to West Virginia, honestly. I mean, Neil Brown's probably saved his job with a 6-4 record right now, but I'd love to see Rich Rod back in Power Five. Arizona just that wasn't going to happen. He needs a time to build his program. But he's also a quick fix guy. I mean, Jacksonville State's been very impressive since he got there. So give me them to cover.
I would lean toward Jacksonville State as well. I'd probably have a little bit stronger of a lean to the over. Jacksonville State plays at the fastest offensive tempo in the nation. They can run on anybody. Louisiana Tech's defense stinks. Louisiana Tech, they try to throw. Sometimes they throw turnovers, and then the other team gets a short field, and then they can return fire a little bit, right? I mean, they do have some skill talent. It's just the other positions on that team need to get stocked in the portal or recruiting or whatever, but they can generate some explosive plays there. So I would lean the over. My system's total on that one is 58.2. So a little bit over where we are in the market. That's the direction I would lean. Robert Moore says, let's get this money today. Yes, sir. What do you guys think about SMU versus Memphis? Can you parlay Memphis +9 with the over total of 64? What do you think about that one, Mike?
I mean, yeah, I like that as a potential parlay. I mean, SMU is a good football team. But Memphis is 8-2, and they're not getting a lot of national respect out there. I think they're pretty solid. So, if you get 9, and it's going to go over. I think this is going to be a high-scoring football game. So I wouldn't mind that parlay.
Yeah, I don't trust the Memphis coaching staff as far as I can throw them, the Silverfield and guys like that. But I had to stay away from this game, and I like the SMU team a decent amount. Although some of these games they're pulling guys that they've had some injuries past month. But I viscerally I would lean SMU, but my system has a strong lean the other way, and so I ended up staying away from this one. My line on this game is SMU -5. And then my system has a total on this game of 73.1.
Yeah, go over for sure. 60.
I think over is the play.
63.5 live right now, and it just flipped from 8.5 to 9. So Memphis is getting 9, but that keeps flipping from 8.5 to 9.
Yeah, we agree on the over in that one. John Tolkien says Appalachian State starting to play better last few games. They actually have. Appalachian State surprising. I thought that Sean Elliott guy was going to get fired, and not Elliott. Who's the coach at App State now? Blanking. Anyway, I thought Sean Clark. I thought that guy was going to get fired, but yeah, they played really well last couple of weeks. To John's point, do you guys think that they can cover against James Madison college game day spotlight and all? Indeed, yeah, we got ESPN in the building. What do you think about that one today, Mike?
No, I mean JMU's obviously pretty jacked up, 10-0, not able to go to a bowl. Now they're going to take it to the government is going to get involved here. There's going to be legislation against the NCAA. I think the NCAA is going to cave, but with the game day atmosphere, all that good stuff, I'm not betting against JMU. App State has been, better. They're still a 6-4 football team. They can look great in some games, and then they just horrible. I don't trust them. I trust what JMU is doing here. They're fighting for something. And with this atmosphere, I think they're going to come out and play very strongly.
Yes, I wanted to check what that one was live. Being 9.5, I would lean James Madison in the single digits. I just wanted to make sure that thing was in the single digits. My line on that game is James Madison -10.2. So my system not showing a ton of value on them, but I do think James Madison very, very clearly the superior team here. They also got the national spotlight. And like Mike mentioned, they're trying to make the case of please, please, please let us into the bowl season. Michigan, they just dismissed their lawyers. They were going after the NCAA, and then they said, we'll drop this thing and whatnot. We accept this suspension. Why doesn't Michigan just send their lawyers down to James Madison? They can take over this case and try to get JMU into bowl season. I want JMU in bowl season instead of a friggin' 5-7 Rutgers team or Rice team like we've got in the last couple of years.
Michigan was guilty, so that's why.
Mike.
No, they're
my virgin ears.
100% guilty. But
my virgin ears.
So JMU's laying 9.5 live right now. The total is 56.5. They can't lose this game, and I don't think they're going to, but I think they want to send a message. Like if they could, with game day there, if they could blow out an App State team, it's going to be a millisecond of national attention because nobody really truly cares. People are just outraged by outrage. I think they could make a better case for themselves. So they know, not only do they have to continue to be undefeated, but they have to win impressively style points to see if they can get this overturned.
2K says, getting 28 points, I feel I should not just walk, but run and jump in that boat and row it all the way to Columbus. Thoughts on taking Minnesota plus 28 versus Ohio State? Well said, 2K. Mike,
And
what are your thoughts?
can PJ muck this game up and make it as disgustingly ugly as possible to keep this to 28? That's the big question. I would take the 28. I would. The big issue is going to be here if they don't turn the ball over, they can stay within that number. If they do, because even if PJ gets down 3 touchdowns, he's not going to throw the ball. He's just going to keep doing his ugly, run show, and he's going to try to make this as ugly and nasty as possible. But yeah, if they don't turn the ball over, they're going to cover the 28. So I would take Minnesota plus 28.
Yeah, my system's line on this game is Ohio State minus 28.3. So we're right there. All week it was a little bit under the 4 touchdowns. Now we got up to the 28. I'm not showing any line value there. What I like in this one, it's the same thing we talked about in Maryland, Michigan. I like the under of this one because I think Ohio State going to do like Mike mentioned, Minnesota, they just want to make sure that it's not super embarrassing, I think. And I think Ohio State's prerogative is let's get out of here as quickly as possible and get to Michigan. My system's total on this game, 41.9 anyway. I like the under at that one. That's the way that I would lean in that game. Nicholas Halda says, Rock Chalk check-in. Is it going to be bad as the 10-point spread suggests? What a year it could have been with better quarterback health. Talked about that one at the near the top. But yeah, Mike and I both agree laying the points with Kansas State, unfortunately. Robert Moore says, what are your guys' thoughts on Michigan State versus Indiana? Total is 47 with Indiana as a 3-point favorite. Mike, what do you think?
I'm not touching that at all. I mean, you got a bad team against a bad team. You don't know if you're going to get anywhere near 47 or you don't know if you're going to get 70. It's 2 horrible football teams and a field goal line. I'm not touching any part of it.
My system's total on that game is 48.5, pretty close to the market. My system does have a very strong lean in this game, and it's a bit of a surprising one. It has Indiana minus 1.1, so a pretty strong lean towards Michigan State. I tried to back Michigan State, what was this, about a month ago, getting a touchdown at Minnesota, a game that they were, more or less, around in until the last half of the fourth quarter, and then Minnesota tacks on these couple of touchdowns. After that, I was like, I can't do this with Sparty anymore. So I wouldn't be able to take Sparty myself. Indiana's showing a little bit of fight here. I kind of like that freshman quarterback they have, Sorsby. Mike, we talked about him and in an episode, I don't know, maybe about a month ago, but that's a stay away for me. I don't know. I don't want to watch it either.
I would lean under. I mean, Michigan State has scored 84 points in conference. The next closest is Iowa at 103. Iowa is outscoring Michigan State in Big Ten play, and by a lot. So I would lean under, but I'm not touching it.
Backbay22 asks us, I like Memphis plus the points to hang with SMU, and my crazy Memphis can move the ball. We just hit on that one, but yeah, for me, it's my system agrees with you. It's just I don't trust Silverfield, but yeah, I'm staying away on that one. Don Draper says, I know it's a different video, but any players you targeting off the top of your head with props? I don't think in the 3 games we've touched on so far that we've hit one, because I didn't have a prop play in those, but I got plenty coming up. Go ahead, Mike.
So with the Michigan, game against Maryland, we mentioned how they're going to run the football a lot, but I think you're also going to see a lot of different backs. So I think Blake Corum's going to go under 93.5 because I think you're going to see a lot more Donovan Edwards rushing the ball.
Yeah, agree with that. Yes,
more so than we have in the past, and you're going to see third stringers in there. I think Colston Loveland, the tight end, over 33.5. Again, that's sort of something tight ends are kind of a niche prop thing where you find a number that's a little bit low. And then offensively for Maryland, I'm going under on a lot of things. Baby Tua under 193.5. I think Michigan's going to throttle him. And as you mentioned, that pass rush, it's going to be very, very difficult for him to handle. And Roman Hemby's only 31.5 yards, but he's going to get under that. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah, I agree with fading Corum because I think they're going to yank him early. Why would you run him into the ground here? You got Ohio State coming up. And I agree with the overs on Edwards. I mean, because that's what they do in these games. Just look at the box scores of their blowouts. They put Edwards in and they let him have some more touches and get more run in those kind of games. I go over on the Edwards rushing. I think he has a rushing touchdown prop out there too, just because they're going to be running him. He's going to be the running back in the second half or predominantly. So I would take the overs on him. Robert Moore says, do you guys think East Carolina can upset Navy today? ECU is plus 2.5. I'll kick this one off. I absolutely do. I think the Pirates are going to beat Navy today. It was one of my picks in my column, and I'll tell you why. This time of year, there's a lot of motivation handicapping. And while this was one of the few games I picked this week where it didn't have that in play, because Navy technically could still rally into a bowl game. ECU season's done. But I like ECU in this game because I think they match up exceedingly well. ECU as a team this year, because they lost so much, particularly on offense over the offseason, Holton, all airs, all of his receivers. I mean, the offense was just decimated. The defense lost a lot of guys too. But the only thing that the ECU was good at this year throughout this season, it's their run defense. They're very, very good at run defense. Well, that's the thing that you want to bring to the gunfight against Navy. So they're able to confront that. And then meanwhile, Navy has one of the worst pass defenses in the entire nation. And ECU, their pass rate, they throw, it's like 60% of the snaps. They're not a great passing offense, not like last year, with the last couple of years with all layers. But the way that their offense leans, it goes right into the weakness of Navy. I like ECU in that one. Mike, any thoughts?
I like Navy. I think I know you're a matchup, guy. And again, I'm more of the separate issues here. East Carolina has no chance at a football season. It's over. Navy does have something to play for, and I just think they're going to be a little bit more lively. I get that ECU is good against the run, but this is a different run offense than they're used to handling. So for me, I'm going to go Navy is going to not only win that, but win by a field goal.
Mike, you ready to go on a rant?
About?
Christian Lopez asks us, what's up with all this nonsense with James Madison not being eligible for a bowl? Mike, here's a quarter. I'm putting it in you. Go.
So here's the thing. I mean, rules are rules. I get it. And I'm a rule book guy, right? I follow rules. I'm an old school person. I was raised to say, listen, this is the rule. You follow the rule, okay? But also rules are made to be amended if they're dumb, if they don't service anybody. So, I think the whole thing about moving from FCS to FBS and having to wait 2 years to be bowl eligible was trying to service the FBS teams that are already in play. But as you mentioned, do we want to see a 5-7 football team in a bowl game that they don't even care about, that they probably feel bad about themselves for even being in, over a team that's excited, who's undefeated, who feels that they're on the come up, and this is their welcome to FBS football. So to me, this is one of those rules that should be changed based on circumstance. It should have been changed probably before this. But now we've got a team that's hot, that's undefeated. They're new to the FBS. I get it. But I'm a rule book guy unless the rule's stupid. What does that rule benefit? A 5-7 football team that underachieved, or a team that's overachieving and deserves it? So give me the overturn. I think once the NCAA gets threatened to get sued every time they back down, Tez Walker can speak to that. So I would say, this is going to get overturned, but it just makes no sense. You got to overturn the rule.
Yeah, Christian, to your question, the rule is dumb, and Mike's totally right. It serves the purposes of the people that are already in the club, right? It's like, James Madison or Jacksonville State, they're knocking on the door and they're like, "Hey, can we get in the club?" And then the people in the club are like, "Well, we'll let you in, but you have to agree that you don't really take any money if you deserve, if you get into a position to earn it your first couple years, because we don't want you taking some of our money from one of the people in this room already, and then we'll let you in if you agree to that." If it was 1 year, it'd be like, okay. I still don't like the 1 year thing, by the way. I think Jacksonville State, for instance, should be in a bowl this year because they earned it. There's going to be, again, 5-7 teams that we might have to shove into a bowl game, undeservedly so, over a team like this. Is stupid. The James Madison thing being in their second year, they've already had to sit out the bowl last year. And now this is a team where it could be the New Year's Six representative from the G5, just qualitatively, objectively, to keep them out of bowl season, their second year in here. What are we doing here? The rule is friggin' stupid. It's antiquated. It was antiquated a long time ago. Overturn the rule. James Madison is not wrong about this.
So let's say Nebraska goes 5-7. And they know Nebraska is an established program. It has fan base. They will travel and they'll whatever town they're in for a crappy bowl, they will, bring that city revenue. And JMU is a newer program than FBS, doesn't have a real following. It's a money grab, as is everything in the NCAA. And that's why they're sticking steadfastly to this, because they're hoping that a Wisconsin or a Nebraska or somebody with a massive fan base, even if they're 5-7, sneak into a bowl. You could do both. I mean, there's going to be a lot of bowl spots out there, and I think an exception for at least one team would be a good one. So we agree on that.
Pat Mahomes asks us, and Pat, thanks again every week for coming in and watching our show. The day before you prepare for your game, that's very nice. Or maybe they're on Monday night this week, so maybe Pat has an extra day. But Pat Mahomes asks us thoughts on Emily Bailey over 99 rushing yards. So TCU playing Baylor today. Mike, let me give you a couple stats on this one from Baylor's run defense, an abomination if we've ever seen one. Baylor's run defense, 100th in rushing success rate, 116th in marginal explosiveness against the run, 100th in opportunity rate. Baylor stinks in the trenches. Boy, did they miss Siaki Ika. And then going back 2 years, boy, did they miss Terrell Bernard. It's a really stinky run defense. I would take Emily Bailey to get 100 yards today.
Gone over 105 times, and he had 98 last week against a good Texas team. So I 100% agree with you.
Over. Next question we got, and thanks for that one, Pat Mahomes again. Joe Tomazak asks, is Oregon State -2 against Washington? Joe, we will be getting to that one in just a bit. So wait, I have lots of thoughts on that one. Robert Moore asks us, what about Mike's favorite team, Iowa? Is the under going to hit today at 32.5? We don't have that one on the sheet today, Mike. So thank you so much, Robert, for asking us. Mike, what are your thoughts on your favorite team?
Under. Illinois stinks. Iowa can't score. 32.5 is high. I mean, yeah, hammer the under.
And I would agree with that. Yeah. Altmaier is back in for Illinois. I think if I was Illinois, I would have said, yeah, Luke, take another week to heal yourself. We're going to give Paddock another look after he threw for 500 yards. Altmaier throws the ball up for grabs all the time, and Iowa's secondary is one of the best in the nation at getting their hands on balls and flipping the field. Although I will say Cooper DeJean's out for the year. Iowa continues to have their injury woes. That sucks, but I would go with the under on this one.
We've been wrong. I mean, I know they're not, undefeated against the under, but we've made so much money on anybody like Nebraska, Minnesota, Iowa, Illinois. The Big Ten West under has made you a ton of money this year if you just kept consistently with it, even as that line dropped at 28.5. So 32.5, you might be scared of. Don't be scared whatsoever. This is going to be a 17-7 type of football game.
Yeah, it's the LSU overs weekly and the Iowa unders. Yeah, just ride that wave, baby. Snook Slayer asks us, UNLV shoots down Air Force today. Big G5 game today, Mike, in the Mountain West.
Yes, UNLV. First of all, I love him. I think he's a great coach. He's done an amazing job here. Obviously they couldn't hang with Michigan as nobody could, and but they've done a tremendous job. That whole staff, Coach Marion, Odom, all those guys. And I'm out on Air Force after they completely 100% let me down. They can, rot. You're 8-2. Thanks a lot. Great, good season, right? And listen, thank you for your service. It's not like a thing where I don't like America. But now you've lost to Army 23-3. You just lost to Hawaii 27-13. People have figured you out. UNLV is going to win this big.
Yeah, the struggles the last 2 weeks after Air Force was awesome to begin the season, then they lose the last 2 weeks and those weird games, and then you have all this weird stuff with the injuries with Air Force. Mike, you remember before that 2 week stretch that Calhoun, the coach for Air Force, he had said that he had come out in the media and said that Larrier, the quarterback, it said he was going to be out for a long time. And then the reports were like, Larrier's out for the season. Well, Larrier didn't miss any time whatsoever. Then he was back out for the next game. But he's very clearly compromised in some way. So they're playing him through whatever he's got going on. He does not look 100%. They also had their top fullback was out the last game. They've had a receiver that's banged up. They have other injuries in addition to that. But we can't get injury news out of the service academies. It's hard to get them enough with the regular colleges, but the service academies, nobody covers them really with the beat reporters. So they're not giving us the injury information. Apparently, Mr. Calhoun, he just says, my quarterback's going to be out for a long time. But no, now the next game, here he is.
You can say anything you want.
I don't know.
I mean, honestly, Thursday night with the Burrow thing, not even being on the injury report. I mean, the NFL has like penalties for, if you don't list somebody on the injury report. It turns out you could lose draft picks. You certainly could lose money. In college football, you can do whatever you want. Cam Rising, week to week, he's out for the year. There was lies and lies and lies. You can lie, and that's honestly college football. If you want to embrace gambling, because you have to, then you have to hold people accountable for actually telling you the truth when it comes to injury reports. And you're not there yet. So you don't know what to believe, but forget about Air Force. Fade Air Force.
Logman asks us thoughts on the Hawaii money line. Very risky, but very rewarding, 50-50 to me. So Hawaii is traveling to Wyoming today, 13.5-point dog. Tough to play in Laradice, Mike. What do you think about that one?
It's not risky. It's not, well, it's rewarding.
Plus 410.
It's not tempting.
That's what I'm seeing.
Not tempting. Plus, no, they're not going to win it at Wyoming. I wouldn't. If you're going to put maybe $5 on it to win 20, that's great, but you don't put a lot of money on that.
Yeah, my line on that game is Wyoming minus 12.5. So I could see taking the 13.5. Hawaii ambushing Wyoming, or I'm sorry, Hawaii ambushing Wyoming in Laramie. That might be a bridge too far for me. I know that Hawaii was able to get Air Force last week, but that was at home. Of course, Air Force flying over there, and then Air Force had all the injuries like we were just talking about. This is a different proposition. And look, I was on UNLV last week when they hosted Wyoming on the Friday, and UNLV put the hammer down on Wyoming. Wyoming is a totally different team on the road than they are at home. When they bring people into altitude in Laramie, it's a totally different scenario, as Texas Tech and a whole bunch of these different teams that have gone there this year could tell you. This is a tougher thing for Hawaii. I guess the 13.5, I wouldn't argue with you too hard. I don't know if I buy a money line ticket on that one, even at the good price. Cody Wilkin asks us, longtime listener to the podcast, but first time watching the live show on YouTube. Thanks for joining us, Cody. Who do you like teasing up more? Who do you like teasing up more, Utah up to 7 or Washington up to 7? What do you think, Mike?
I'd say Washington. We're going to get to that one, and I think we have a disagreement on that one. I like both. I mean, Utah is a team that I've, backed most of the season, when I was disappointed in one game against Oregon, but most of the season they've come through, even with that sort of backdoor cover against Washington last week when the dude intercepted the ball and dropped it at the 2-yard line, which you should lose all ability to play football if you do that. I still don't know how it's happening. It's just amazing that does happen. But Utah's been good, covering. So if you can, tease them up. But I'm more on the Washington thing. I think that's, we disagree. I think is sort of like a precursor Oregon State, Washington. But I'm more on the Washington side.
Yeah, Cody, I'm sorry. I can't give one on this one because I don't think I would do either of them because I like the spoiler alert, but I like the other side on both. We'll get to those more extended thoughts. Mike, the last two, I'm going to put these together because they're both about the Mountain West. Kobe Verkateren and Steve DiNucci ask us separately. Kobe asked, he said, stinky game, thoughts on Colorado State versus Nevada minus 12, solid pass offense versus a poor pass defense. And then Steve asked us, Utah State is a home dog against a Boise State team that just fired their coach. You like Utah State plus the points. Mike, thoughts on those two Mountain West games today?
I'm not betting either of them. I mean, Colorado State, I get it. Boise State, I have no idea what we're going to see. I know there's this, you have that obviously theory of coaches, after a firing and how they rise up. And, we've seen that before. They get excited and everybody's like, I'm just not sure if Boise State's that team or not. I don't trust Utah State at all. I'm not touching any of these, none of these games.
Yeah, so the first one, I agree with the line of thinking of Kobe about the good pass offense against the bad pass defense. The line, though, the market has reflected that. This thing is a couple points inflated above where my system has it. Because of that, I'm going to stay away from it. But I wouldn't argue with you too hard buying a Colorado State ticket. As far as Steve's question about Utah State being the home dog, my system's line on that one, it's a little bit more interesting at I have Boise State as a 2-point favorite in that one. So flipping it the other way, there's a theory about that, with what do you call the dead cat bounce is what we call it. The week after you fire the head coach, and I can tell you the Boise State roster. Like, I'm sorry to say it, but they hated Avalos. I mean, that was a part of the reason for this. Half that friggin' roster and most of the starters, they've been talking to people for the portal for a month plus now. No joke. Like, a lot of the key guys on that team, you're going to see a rash of defections right after the season. That's not a response to the Avalos firing. The Avalos firing was a response to that. The administration knew the entire team is leaving because they hate the head coach. The head coach isn't very good besides, so let's get rid of him. In this game, you're getting Talon Green. Talon Green was thinking about, we'll see after the season. But now he gets to go into the starting lineup here because Maddox McLean gets injured in the last one. Talon Green, this offensive system, this stupid offensive system that Bush Hamden brought in, not a fit for Talon Green. But maybe Bush Hamden's like, well, I'm going to be unemployed in the offseason anyway. Maybe it benefits me to let Talon Green do Talon Green things and run around like he was last year when he was good. And maybe I shouldn't pen him in for these last two games because I'm going to need to make an argument for my next job starting in 2 weeks. Those are the weird things going on in this one. I think I would lean Boise State in a contrarian play on that one. We'll get back to your guys' questions here in a bit, but we're going to get back to the rest of the card so we can motor on through. But keep typing those questions, and we'll get to them again near the end of the show. Mike, Pac-12 game, Arizona -1 against Utah. What do you think about this one?
So Arizona has been very, very good. Big surprise. Jed Fish has done an excellent job building that program up. I wasn't sure if he was going to get long enough, but there's patience at Arizona as opposed to certain places like Florida. They're a good football team. I think he's a candidate, honestly, for that UCLA job, even though if I were him, and we don't know if Chip Kelly's gone or not, but I would never touch that job in a million years. The administration of UCLA is less supportive than Arizona, believe it or not. But I still can't bet against Utah. I just think he's a better coach. I know Jed Fish has done a good job, but Whittingham is my guy. He schemes well. He does in-game adjustments well. He knows what his team can and cannot do against certain teams. He's got a good defense. I know they've been banged up, especially at the beginning of the season, the quarterback position, but more so lately. But I'm still going Utah here, and I know we're going to disagree on this one. But to me, give me the better coach.
Yeah, I had Mike, and we talked about this one earlier this week. I had a really tough time with this game. It was like back and forth and back and forth. I'm going to go with my lean is with Arizona on this one, the home team. And it's in large part because it's something we talked about with Utah a year where, and it's sort of what we were talking about with Wyoming. And there's a couple other teams in the nation that profile like this, but Utah is way better at home than they are on the road. Utah's also been fortunate in some games this year, catching teams backup quarterback situations, first start with a new team scenario, different stuff like that. The other in-game situation, sort of micro thing to watch for in this one, Utah is the really good pass rush, and the teams that can't protect their quarterbacks, they just get swarmed. And then the quarterback starts seeing ghosts and different stuff like that. And that's how Utah can sort of, start going down the hill like that. Arizona has a really good pass protecting offensive line. So they should be able to neutralize that Utah pass rush. The other thing is Utah's pass defense. The thing they're really good at is taking away your explosives. Arizona, they're very good passing offense. It's more the short and intermediate game and then letting the guys run. Seems like a good matchup there for them. I think Arizona keeps it rolling, laying the short number, but it's a tough one.
I like if you're going to not play it side here, I think this could be a defensive game. Between these two teams, it's gone under 4 of the last 5 times. Arizona's 8 of the last 10 games has gone under. 5 of their last 5 games have gone under at home, and Utah plays to the under. So, I mean, that might be the play if you don't like a side here.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with that at all, Mike. Yeah, the total, we would have the same lean on that one. Moving to our next one, Georgia. Now it's interesting line movement, Mike. This thing was 10.5 yesterday. Now it's down to Georgia -9.5, or at least it was right when we jumped on the show. Heading to Tennessee today. How do you see this one?
Georgia. They're playing so well. They're starting to peak at the right time. They're starting to get confidence in a lot of things they do. Brock Bowers comes back early from something he didn't have to come back that early from. A lot of guys might have even shut it down, and he did not. This team has, Kirby Smart has this team motivated. He finds a way to find every game to be a motivating factor. I think they're going to drill Tennessee. We saw some of the weaknesses against Missouri last week. If Tennessee falls behind, they have no way of getting back. They don't have the passing game that they had last season. Now they're banged up in the secondary. The secondary hasn't been playing that well. I think Georgia's going to win this one and win this one very, very big.
I agree with all that. Yeah, I'm gonna lay the points with Georgia. I also in this one I like the Dwan Edwards over rushing yards. I also like the Brock Bowers over in his receiving yards. I believe it's in the mid 50s. I don't like the Tennessee offensive props as much because I think that Georgia is going to be able to greatly slow that running attack. And then if they do indeed get the double digit lead, like I think they will, it's going to force the now Joe Milton's got to throw into that defense. I think that's where this thing could get ugly. Joe Milton, you can coax him into mistakes, because he doesn't see the field very well. This thing is all Georgia. Mike and I agree on that one. Mike, our next one is North Carolina heading to Clemson today. Again, this was 6.5 all week, moved to 7.5. I believe yesterday. Little surprising line movement late in the week. Who do you like in this one?
I'm still sticking with Dabo, man. I mean, I know this hasn't been a good football season, but this is a good roster. People earlier this year were picking apart the talent on the team. There's a ton of talent on this football team. It's just not coming together. Klubnik hasn't been developed. Shipley was banged up. They haven't had the rushing attack that we're used to. Used to be the one weakness at Clemson was the offensive line, and that's really not been, the case. I mean, they haven't been good. But there's glaring weaknesses on offense because nobody's put it together. They don't have the wide receivers that they're used to having. That being said, North Carolina's defense is not good. I think they're going to struggle, keeping them in check at some points. And then that defense against Clemson matches up against Drake May and that offense pretty well, I think. Dabo is still Dabo. This is a Clemson team with a lot of heart. The Notre Dame game was kind of an inspiring, like everybody thinks we suck, let's rise up. I still think he needs to change a lot of things he's doing, and I think he has to, not build from within. He said the locker room is his portal. He needs to hit the portal a little bit more. He needs to be better with his hiring. I mean, he went out and got Riley out of family, and that hasn't worked out that well. But he needs to continue to do that because it will work out if you go and get guys and don't promote everybody from within. I think he's learning lessons. I like North Carolina as a football team, but I don't trust that defense. And I think, oddly enough, I think an offense is going to have a big day. I've got Klubnik over 1.5 touchdown passes, Maffa over 77.5 yards. I think they're going to put up some points and cover.
Mike, if you and I ever started a band, it would be called Locker Room is My Portal.
Yeah, that's a good one. There's so many good band names. I think of stuff all the time and I'm like, that would be a good band name. Like band names will never run out. You'll never run out of a band name.
Especially if Davo keeps doing his press conferences. Yeah, he's been a true national treasure this year. We disagree on this one, especially getting the 7.5. I like North Carolina in this one. I get it why the market's sort of out on them after the past month. You had the loss against Virginia, Georgia Tech, close win over Duke. I just think this is a really good buy low opportunity. Mike was mentioning Clemson's mediocre offense. Clemson also plays bad special teams. And then, of course, UNC has a top 10 objective offense, qualitative offense. Clemson defense down to 14th SP plus, and it's very nicked up right now. 2 starters in the secondary for Clemson have been out for multiple games. We'll have to see in this one, but highly questionable heading into today. And then linebacker Barrett Carter was absent last week against Georgia Tech, may well be again. North Carolina scored 27 or more points every game, and Mike has not lost by more than 4 points since last December against these same Clemson Tigers. That was the first game of Drake May's career where he had played Clemson. This will be the second and last time. Big time revenge spot for Drake May. Big time spotlight game before he leaves for the NFL. We'll see. I think he gives them the best shot. I'll take those 7.5 points. Before we move on and get back into the audience questions and more games, and keep typing your questions below and we'll get to them. Wanted to mention to you guys, if you want to win a premium 1-year subscription to Betting Pros, only 2 steps you got to take. Subscribe to the Betting Pros YouTube channel right now, which you can do right beneath there. That's number 1. Number 2, comment below on this video. And that's it. That's literally it. So just subscribe and then write a comment down there. We'll announce a winner on this channel. So you probably want to turn on those notifications. So you learn if you won, but that's it. Back to the show. Mike, let's we'll hit the questions after these three games. We'll get back to the mailbag right before we do our the Thor's Hammer and Farrell Fay. But let's knock out our last three first. Huge game today. Washington traveling to Oregon State. A lot of storylines in this one. Last year, the Pac-12, and Washington's undefeated, and Oregon State, can they be the Kingslayer here? Where do you lean in this one, Mike?
I'm leaning Washington. Oregon State's a tough place to play. Obviously, Oregon State's in a difficult spot here. But I get the rallying. They don't really have a schedule for next season. They don't even have a conference. Most of the team is likely to leave in the portal. There's nothing Jonathan Smith can do to stop this, but he's kept his team together. They've been playing hard, and they're a tough team to play on the road. But that, to me, doesn't mean Kalen DeBoer and this team, they're getting a little bit healthy. McMillan's back at wide receiver. The offense, it hasn't been figured out, but it's been toned down. People have learned, what to do. But that being said, I still think we're starting to see this Washington team find different ways to win football games. They don't just have to outscore you like they did against USC or against Oregon. They can win in different ways. So I'm taking Washington to win and cover this game. They've got so much on the line here. I get Oregon State fans are ticked off. Game day is not there, and the disrespect of the national, media, and the fact that now Washington State and Oregon State are in control of the Pac-12, but it doesn't matter because they can't be. The judge essentially said, "You guys are in control, but you can't be mean to the other guys." So, what's the point of being in control? They're playing for something, but so is Washington. Washington is on the outside looking in right now. They know they have to win every football game, and they have to win every football game impressively. So I'm going with that.
A lot of litigation on today's show, Mike.
Yeah, well, it's college football. It's going to get worse, man. I said this when NIL started in the portal. We haven't even seen the lawsuits from players against teams when it comes to name, image, likeness. That's coming. You promised me this. I didn't get this. And, the schools are going to be like, we didn't promise you anything. We're not allowed to do that, quote unquote. There's lawsuits going to be a weekly staple in college football probably within 2 years. It's just going to happen.
We disagree on this one, Mike. I'm gonna lay it at home with Oregon State. A line that's gone. We got 1.5 now?
Yeah.
It was 1.5 live. So I'm gonna lay it there. Washington 10-0, Oregon State 8-2. But if you look at second order wins, which is, it looks at post game win expectancy and the quality of the play that you had inside of the game, outside the variance of just the rote win loss. Washington has 8.5 second order wins. Oregon State has 8.2. So they get a lot closer. In part, that's because Washington last 2 weeks, their 2 wins, they did not have a post game win expectancy above 55%. Both those were under that. A couple other trends of this one, just to speak to how Washington, they've been winning, but it's been way less impressive last month or so. Washington hasn't beaten an opponent by more than 10 points since September 23rd. Washington's last 3 road Pac-12 games against Stanford, USC, Arizona, they won by an average of 8 points per game, 8.0 points per game. And that wasn't fluky results. It was the exact same post-game adjusted points per game margin of those 3 games. And Oregon State, of course, another theme of this show has been teams that are way better at home than they are on the road. Oregon State, they've beaten every opponent it has played in Corvallis in 2023 by double digits, including Utah and UCLA. Over the last 3 years, Oregon State is the most profitable team in the nation at home against the spread in college football. And then this Oregon State team seems to have been built exactly with playing this Washington team in mind. You have the ball control offense where they run the slow tempo. They can both run and they can throw deep, and run with multiple guys. Obviously, DJ, you can be a hammer. You have Martinez, you have Fenwick coming in off the bench and different stuff like that. But Oregon State, the whole point being, they can keep that clock running, and then they meander back up till they huddle up. and different stuff like that. They're going to be able to keep the ball out of Penix's hands, frustrate that Washington offense, I think. And then Oregon State's defense, maybe a little bit down from last year. It's been way more than offset by the offensive improvements, but the relative strength of that Oregon State defense, it's the pass defense. Beavers are top 10 efficient on offense, like I said, and they have the bottom 25 adjusted tempo. I think all this plays into their hands. And then you have the big time storyline, of course, of Oregon State can maybe knock Washington out of the playoff with this win, or at least push them to the very, very brink. And then they would need help to get in the jilted lover and all that sort of stuff. I'm going to lay the points with Oregon State. Mike, to our next one, maybe not quite as big of a game, but Florida traveling to Missouri today. Is this a spot where Missouri lays the smackdown again, or is Florida in the spot here getting double digits, 11.5 or so, where they can come in and keep this one close? How do you see this one?
I think they're going to keep it close. It's not because Florida is a good football team. I mean, this isn't going well under Billy Napier, and when he was hired, it wasn't his coaching ability I questioned. It was the patience of the fan base and the boosters, and it's just not there. He's going to have a rough finish to this season. They're going to lose this football game. I think they can stay within 11.5. I'm leaning under as well. Florida's going to run the ball. That's what we know. Trevor Etienne's going to go over 51.5 passing yards, rushing yards. And they're going to go with a short passing game as well. They're going to try to work the clock and control it. Not in a Minnesota way, where it's just desperately horrible, or an Iowa State way. It's just going to be, they're going to try to keep this game, relatively close. They're going to try to keep Missouri's offense off the field. And I think that's why they're going to be able to keep it under 11.5 and 57.5 to me. But let down maybe for Missouri too. I mean, they just beat Tennessee and destroyed them. This isn't an easy game, but between those factors, I'm going to take Florida to cover this 11.5. I don't think they're going to win though.
Agreed. I'm with you on this one. My line is Missouri minus 8.5. I think Florida can stay within this number. A little bit bloated, and I agree with you. A little bit of for Missouri just to sort of get you through kind of a game in this one. There's also the matchup stuff. This is one of my favorite prop games of this week because Florida is in the props. You're always looking for these defenses that are heavily tilted one way because a lot of times the books and the market, they're not reflective of that within these numbers. They don't modulate it based on the opponents or the situations. It has a lot to do with what did this guy average over the last 3 games, and that's how you're setting some of these lines. I seen the Cody Schrader line was set, was ludicrous. Let me see if I can pull up what I saw. Cody Schrader's line made my head or my eyes bug out of my head.
114.5 when I saw it. That's
a ridiculous line. Florida's run defense is good. Florida's run defense is 27th in the nation in success rate.
Oh, that's Ray Davis, though.
What's that?
Kentucky. I remember when we thought Florida's run defense was good, and then Kentucky just.
Well, so here's the bugaboo. Florida gives up too many explosive runs. So, like, if the teams that can hit the dingers, you can get them there. Florida's 130th in rushing explosion. That's how you can get your yards. But Missouri's rushing offense is 72nd in explosiveness. Missouri, they chip away at you with the efficiency stuff. That's what Schrader gets, 37th in that. It's just not a great matchup for them. I think Florida's run defense counteracts exactly what Missouri's running offense does. I think it's the Missouri passing attack that is going to have all kinds of fun today throwing against that Florida secondary. Ray Davis, Mike, as you know, on that Kentucky run offense, they're looking to hit the dingers. And so they steer right into the weakness of that Florida run defense. I would go under on Schrader. I take the over on Missouri's passing. I also kind of like some of the offensive props as far as Florida goes. I'll go with the over on Graham Mertz. I've cashed some Graham Mertz tickets this year. Missouri's pass defense is not very good. 56, both success rate and explosion. 91st in terms of pass completion rate in the nation. Florida's pass offense is better than people think. They're 34th in passing success rate and number 3 in completion rate. They're going to be able to manufacture the completions. And especially if you think they're a double-digit underdog. Mertz is going to be throwing the ball here. And Missouri, by the way, has a really solid run defense. So if you had your druthers, if you were Sunbelt Billy, you would want to throw the ball more here. It's how you're going to move the ball on Missouri. So
Yeah,
I
I've
will
got
take the over on Mertz.
over 1.5 passing touchdowns. I've got him over that as well. And then Brady Cook under 32.5 rushing yards. I don't know why that number is so high, because I think Florida, with sacks can keep them under that. And Mookie Cooper's line looks low at 33.5 receiving yards. I would go over that.
For sure. Yeah. Everyone's going to eat against Florida secondary in this one. So yeah, big time prop game in that one. Mike, last game we're going to hit, and then we're going to get back to into our mailbag before we get out of here. We'll probably have about 15 minutes to get in there. Any other questions you guys have on today's card? Side bets, totals, player props, put them in the chat now. And we're going to open that up again before we get out of here in just a second here. But one more game to talk about, Mike. Iowa State is hosting Texas today. Could this be a spot, another potential ambush spot? Ames at night. It's been a house of horrors for some of these Big 12 teams. Now Texas goes there. They did get Quinn Ewers back last week. That was in the spot where, Texas would get against TCU, where Texas always plays down, and they did in that game. They did not cover it, but they did get Ewers back, but only a 3-point win. But then, unfortunately, Texas lost Jonathan Brooks, their stud running back for the season, torn ACL. Number one running back on most NFL draft boards, the early ones so far. Jonathan Brooks, 6.2 yards per carry over his career. So a tough loss there. Mike, what do you think in this one? Are you going with the Ames Magic, or are you going with Texas? They're back to being Texas, and they're going to march on into the postseason?
I'm going to parlay Iowa State to cover this line, and then I'm going to take the under. And my reasoning is this. Iowa State is going to try to keep this to be a lower scoring game, as they do most times. It's a home game at night, which is a difficult place to play. Texas beats them. They're 14-5 against them in, I don't know, the last 19 is that. But 10-9 against the spread. They always have trouble covering against Iowa State. And it's not just, this goes back way, of course, before Matt Campbell and Steve Sarkisian, but there's something about this matchup that Iowa State schemes properly for them. They play with a good game plan. They try to keep things close. It could very well be a backdoor cover, but it's going to be a cover. And this is 8 out of their last 8 games against each other has been under. My buddy Keith did some research on this stuff. 8 out of 8 is the under. This game always falls under what you expect it to be. So I'm going to parlay Iowa State and the under.
Mike, I also like to live dangerously. I'm going to go against those trends and actually lean over on this one. And I will say I had some trouble with this one. Initially early in the week, it was like, I'm taking those points with Iowa State for sure. That's still the way I would lean. I definitely wouldn't lay it with Texas. But the more you look into this one, I started the way that my handicap led me. I kind of like the over in this one. Like I said, both running game. I don't expect either team to be able to run the ball. I'll just say that at the top. Nobody runs on Texas. Iowa State most certainly is, and Iowa State's running offense stinks anyway. And then Iowa State has a good defensive front, and then Texas has the running back injury. So you got the young kids. They got to sort that thing out. And then you got to run against a good Iowa State front seven. So I don't think they're going to be able to run the ball either, which is a part of the reason, by the way. CJ Baxter's number is way too high. Definitely the under on CJ Baxter. It's like in the 80s somewhere. I don't think he's getting there. And we'll have to see what the distribution is post Brooks, but even just in a vacuum, under. But I think both these teams then, they're going to skew very aggressively into the pass. And I think it's going to work out. Quinn Ewers, I think he's going to throw for a lot of yards here. I would go on his overs. And the Rocco Beck kid, he's been playing pretty decent. You can get Texas's secondary. You can have the Texas secondary. So I think there's going to be more passing here, a bit more explosive plays maybe than on the surface. Might be a bit contrarian, but I lean the over. Mike, and you and I do agree on the lean towards Iowa State in that one. Let's open the mailbag one last time, Mike, before we get into Thor's hammer and Farrell's fade and our favorite prop play of the game. I got for my favorite prop today, Mike, I'm going way out there in the weeds. So you're going to have to follow me on that one and track, but we'll get to those ones in 15 or so. But we're going to open that mailbag one more time here. Let's see, where do we leave off here? Oh, Mr. Sparkle asks us, West Virginia against Cincinnati. Who do we like in that one, Mike?
I like West Virginia. I think Cincinnati. I mean, this was Louisville was going to get rid of Satterfield, and they were putting all these stipulations into any potential future contract he was going to have, and they just got lucky. They got lucky because that guy ended up bailing for Cincinnati. They got Brom. This is a bad fit. He's not a good coach. The Cincinnati team is playing very listlessly. Neil Brown, on the other hand, was coming into this season under fire on the hot seat. They've been a bit of a surprise. The only worry I have here is C.J. Donaldson going to play? He's a game time decision apparently, but I think he will play, and I'm taking West Virginia.
Yeah, my system has a slight lean towards Cincinnati. I definitely would not take the points, though. I could not take Cincinnati. I've been burned on them a couple times this year. Don't disagree with your analysis at all, Mike. It's a stay away for me. The 6.5 number makes that one tough. If we were closer to 4.5, that would make it a much stronger one. But yeah, definitely not taking Cincinnati in that one. Next one, Colby Verkuten asks us, I appreciate the Georgia look, Mike. Any concerns with a backdoor cover for Tennessee? He's talking about. Appreciate the show as always. Any concerns, Mike?
I don't think so. I think there's, Georgia's on a mission right now. They don't need style points or anything like that. They win and they're in, of course. But I think he's one of the best motivators in all of college football. I think they're going to be up for this game, and I think they're going to just blow them out.
Yeah, I would lean the same. Yeah, they're not, to me, they're not as big of a one as say UNC at the 7.5, right? This Georgia Tennessee, it's at 9.5. UNC Clemson's at 7.5. I'd be way more confident about a guy like Drake May coming in through the back door in that passing attack than Joe Milton. I think you agree with me, Mike. Joe Milton, we don't trust Joe Milton as far as we can throw him in any scenario.
No, he could throw the ball far. We don't trust him as far as we could throw him, no.
Correct. Mike Huseman asks us, I like Charlotte as a +3 home dog against Rice with an injured JT Daniels today. Do either of you guys think the fighting Pogies and Biff Poggi can get the upset win today? Mike, this is your bread and butter.
I'm going with Biff.
Fighting Pogies.
I'm going with Biff. Biff tweeted out last week, of course, he's sticking by Jim Harbaugh. That was a bad idea because this is unraveling very quickly in Ann Arbor. But then he tweeted out, I think yesterday, Jim Harbaugh, serve your suspension on the sidelines here at Charlotte. I would be proud to stand with you again. Like Biff is...
Love Biff. Love that guy.
He's an old school, staunchy old guy.
Biff doesn't care.
He doesn't care because he's rich. Biff is rich.
He's rich.
So a lot of coaches that get into this industry are poor. They become grad assistants. They make no money. They become assistant coaches. They make little money. Then they become rich. Biff was rich before. Biff will always be rich. Biff doesn't care. It shows a little bit in his coaching style. I like Charlotte here. Rice without JT Daniels, who's 38 years old, that experience of JT is going to hurt them.
I agree. I'm going with the fighting Pogies. I love Biff. Biff he says whatever he wants, and I love it. If he wants to back Jim Harbaugh, if he whatever he says, I just love Biff. He's got some attitude. He's got his cut off sweatshirt. Mike, we got to cut off our sweatshirts like Biff does. And that Biff's doing it with the scissors. And it's like,
and he's doing the Belichick thing.
Yeah. And it's like, Biff, you have more money than God. Like, for people out there that don't know Biff, Mike, what was the whole thing? He was like a venture capitalist and all this nonsense beforehand.
Biff is a very wealthy individual, and he was starting this signing day or something website and all this. He threw a ton of money out there. He didn't ever offer me anything, of course, but I just knew Biff. When he was at Gilman, I knew Biff was rich. People told me how loaded Biff was. And when I would go out, every time I visited a game, I would go out to visit the head coach at the, during warmups and all that. I had to kiss Biff's ring, whereas most coaches were like, hey, thanks for being here. This is great. You're a national guy, blah, blah, blah. No, Biff would have none of it. Biff has got rich people energy, and Biff doesn't care.
Biff's money could buy everything, but not Mike Farrell. He didn't have enough for that.
Well, he could have. He just offer me the money, and
I just go with it. Just be like,
I can be bought. Anybody out there wants? You just got to actually offer me the money. Don't just talk about the money. Like, buy me. I will be bought, but you got to offer me the money.
Mike and I are both back in the fighting Pogies today. Yeah, fighting posies. Jeremy George said, just signed on. You guys hit on Minnesota, Ohio State. Anything stand out for you? OSU team total over. We did briefly. I like the under of that game because I think Ohio State's going to deflate the ball. Mike, quick thoughts?
Yeah, it's under. I think PJ is going to row his boat as close to shore as possible, if that makes any sense.
Robert Moore says, what are your guys' thoughts on Troy against Louisiana today?
Troy.
I would go. My line on that one is I got Troy minus 12. The line is a bit inflated. I don't like Louisiana though. That's why I didn't bet that one. But my system sure thinks that there's some value on Louisiana. We'll see. Christian Lopez says Louisville, Miami, pick'em game thoughts.
Yeah, we disagree. You got Miami, I got Louisville.
Correct. Robert Moore says, can Arkansas State upset Texas State? I think so. I think the fighting Butch Joneses are getting it done.
No. So, but I don't back bad coaches, and Butch Jones is a bad coach. So we're going to disagree on that.
Oh, Mike, come on. Yeah. So Arkansas State needs to win these games to get into a bowl game. I think they get it today. Texas State hasn't been the same since they got into theirs. They were all jumping into the lake and everything like that. Texas State has some weird injury stuff too. TJ Finley yanked him at halftime last week. Then they said he wasn't injured. Lost a close game. Malik Hornsby can't throw. I don't know what's going on there. The Joey Herbert kid, Holbert, he didn't play in the last game either. He's their best wide receiver. There's weird stuff going on around Texas State. I'll take the points with Arkansas State. Christian said, sorry I'm late. What's y'all's thoughts on Northwestern against Purdue? I leaned Northwestern earlier in the week, just, viscerally seeing that thing. My system had the strong lean the other way. I ended up staying away. Does Northwestern get a motivational edge? Bringing the head coach back certainly deserves it. The North Dakota State, the defensive coordinator that they have brought in did a fabulous job this year. What do you think about that one, Mike?
I like the under. I mean, it's 48 points. It's a Big Ten West under.
Terry Morrell says, do you trust your system more than the market? That is, if you make a bet based on the adjusted spread, does negative closing line value worry you, or do you feel good about the bet? Well, you always want to get, you want to get good closing line value. So that, but that's another part of it, right? Is sort of thinking about what the market is going to do. Regardless of whether you like the side or not, that's the second sort of aspect of it. I wish I'd waited on UNC this week as one example of this. I got a 6.5 ticket. It's now moved to 7.5. Very surprising line movement for me, but I still like my side. My handicap remains the same. The market can do whatever the market wants to do. My handicap is my handicap, but you do take in information from the market. You'd be dumb not to. Reading those sort of tea leaves, they are indicative of something, but the market ain't right 100% of the time. And certainly the public is wrong more than 50% of the time. So that's how I see that one. Steve Danucci says, thanks for your insights on Boise State, Utah State. I get you guys are on the opposite sides in UNC Clemson. Would the over 59.5 be the smart play? Mike, do you have thoughts on that one?
I think it's going to be a high scoring game. I would lean towards the over.
Yeah, I would too. My system, by the way, is 68 for that total. My system really likes that over. Mr. Sparkle says West Virginia plus 5.5, but I think it's minus 5.5. I think Mike likes that one. I'm staying away though. Yeah. Christian says, asked us about Northwestern Purdue. We just hit on that one. Mr. Sparkle says, do you guys like the over the Washington game 61.5 against Oregon State? I think. Did you have a lean on the total of that one, Mike? I forgot.
Hold on. I might. Hold on.
My system has 68 in that one for the total.
Over. I got to lean on the over, 61.
Yeah, I think I'd lean the over as well. Brady asks us, Michigan and Ohio State covering today. I lean towards Maryland. I know Mike does as well. I hate Minnesota. I don't hate the state of Minnesota. I live in it. I love the state of Minnesota. But this Minnesota Gopher team, I think, stinks. But it's just as Ohio State going to deflate the ball. I like the unders of both those games. I do lean Maryland. The side of Minnesota, Ohio State, I'm not betting that thing.
Look at this, though. Mr. Sparkle, man. FanDuel has boosts for Michigan and Ohio State to cover 14+. Is that real? Ohio State's, of course, going to cover 14+.
So, okay, if Michigan and Ohio State both covered 14, Mr. Sparkle is saying the FanDuel is giving you even money on that bet. My only concern, Ohio State, certainly, that's a lot.
Yeah, I get it. It's the 19 versus the 14 with the Michigan-Maryland, but yeah, I would take plus 100 for that. I mean, Michigan could win by 16 and still not cover.
Yeah, your only concern is the Michigan thing, but I suppose with the odds, because like I said, Ohio State, I'm pretty confident saying that one's locked. So it becomes even money on the, taking 5 points off the Michigan one. I I don't know. I still like Maryland, but I could see it. I won't argue with you too hard. CJ, that dude says UCF at Texas Tech. Thoughts? Texas Tech is laying 3 in that one. Mike, did you have any thoughts on that one?
I'm going to lean Texas Tech. I mean, these are two 5-5 football teams, but Texas Tech has been playing better lately. They beat TCU, they beat Kansas. I'm going to lean Texas Tech.
I also lean Texas Tech. My line on that one is Texas Tech minus 4.2. I also liked what I saw of Texas Tech's defense last week, even before Bean went out, but certainly afterwards. Then it became easier for them. But Texas Tech, they can do some things on defense, and now they have a fully fleshed out offense. They've been running the ball all year long. With Taj Brooks had a great year, but there was those weeks where obviously they had lost Shuck. Shuck gets injured for the year every single year, so that happened again. And then Baron Morton, the backup, who's good, he gets hurt then, and then you were down for a couple weeks. The QB3 couldn't throw it all. The whole offense, you pulled the pull out of the middle of the circus tent. But now Baron Morton's back. They can throw again. They can be multiple on offense. The UCF team not quite as much so, and they have to go into Lubbock. I like Texas Tech. I'll lay it there. Just a couple more. Let's see. CJ, that dude says last one. Baylor at TCU. Over under thoughts. We got a total on that one of 58.5. I'm right around that. Mine's 55.5. Mike, do you have any thoughts on that one?
I'm not touching that. That's like right around where I think it should be.
Yeah, I guess I'd have the slightest lean towards the under.
61. I'm leaning under. 61 now.
61?
Yeah.
Oh, then I'm definitely leaning under.
Yeah.
I guess some people think that Baylor's going to put points on the board. I don't know about that. TCU might have to do a lot of heavy lifting on that total. Okay. Well, Mike, we're moving on to our last segment, starting with Thor's hammer. My favorite play today is Oregon State. I think Oregon State matches up really, really well against Washington for the reasons I got into before. I think they're going to be able to run the ball in Washington. I think they're going to be able to control the time of possession on Washington. I think they're going to frustrate Washington by not giving them the ball back. And I think Oregon State's pass defense is good enough here to be able to, especially with the Michael Penix, the passing attack there has been playing down here over the past month. Jalen McMillan being out and different stuff like that. I think Oregon State can confront that sort of stuff. And then Oregon State's just been so awesome at home over the last 3 years. This sets off as obviously a very intense game with the situation and everything like that. Washington has to take this thing on the road. Qualitatively, these teams are close. Like I mentioned, only separated by 0.3 of a second order win. If you look at that as opposed to the standings, I like Oregon State today as my Thor's hammer. Mike, your Farrell's fade for today.
So I'm going to fade Michigan just because of everything that's happening here. It doesn't mean they're going to lose this football game. I wasn't as impressed with them last week against Penn State as I wanted them to be, as impressive as I wanted them to be. I mean, they were fighting for their coach, and he was suspended, and Sherrod Moore's crying, and everybody's like, Blake Corum's bleeding, and all this stuff, and they still didn't overly impress me as much as I thought. And that was the first good team that played. Now, Maryland's not a good team. They started off strong. Loxley's, things have fallen off a little bit there. But with all these distractions, I mean, just every day something new is coming out. And then yesterday you have the cancellation of the court appearance, taking the suspension, which is an admission of guilt, honestly. Innocent people don't plead guilty. And then, Partridge being fired. They're down a coach. I just don't think they're going to be able to cover this game. So I'm going to fade Michigan. I think they're going to win. I think they'll win by 10 to 14 points. That plus 100 FanDuel thing, plus 14, maybe 16. But I'm not laying that many points. So fade Michigan this week.
So we're moving to our last segment now, our favorite prop culture segment. Mike, do you want to kick this off or you want me to start?
I'll start. You'll have more than me. This is an interesting one. I mean, we talked about a lot of props, obviously. I'm just trying to think what my favorite one is.
Well, I can start us off then while you're finding your favorite.
I got a few, but yeah, go ahead.
So this, like I said, I warned you guys in advance. This one is a bit off the beaten track, and you're gonna have to Gonna have some gumption on this one. You're gonna have some fortitude to click the button. Gonna have to hold your nose a little bit. I like Addison Estrenga, the Iowa tight end, to go over his receiving total of 19 and a half yards. Iowa has been devastated with injuries in general, but especially at the tight end position. Earlier this year it was Lachey, then it was Eric All. Iowa, they only throw to the tight ends. It's not a good passing attack, of course, but they only throw to the tight ends. Here's the thing: last week, Addison Estrenga, he got 8 targets in the Rutgers game. He caught 8 balls, 8 of 8 targets. Okay. Now, it only went for 47 yards, but Iowa wasn't generating any other offense. They have found another tight end that they can throw the ball to. 8 targets in a game they won 22-0. Iowa winning 22-0 is like a regular team winning 80-0. So they were controlling that game. The game script was run. Estrenga still got 8 targets, converted all of them into catches, only got to get to 20 yards in this one. In a game where you have a 3-point spread, the books are telling you Illinois is going to keep this one closer. I don't know. Over on Estrenga, that's my prop culture pick of the day.
That's that is obscure for sure. But an Iowa tight end going over, I mean, that's not a horrible bet. Mine's a little bit different. When I go Dejon Edwards, his number 78.5 rushing yards. Now, Georgia is Georgia. They're able to throw the football. Tennessee has some issues on the defensive back end. They've been okay this season up front. Not great, but okay. But this guy, I think, is going to have a big game. I think they're going to run the ball, and I think they're going to try to play physical. And I think they're going to say to Tennessee, listen, we can beat you any way we want to. He's gone over that number 6 times this season. Against some fairly okay teams, including, you mentioned, the run defense of Florida. He had 96 yards there. I just think he's going to have a big game. It's a weird number. It's a little bit high, and that leads me to believe that 78.5 is something you should go over on. So take Dejon Edwards over 78.5 rushing yards against the Tennessee team that I think is going to really struggle.
A couple other ones for you really quick out the door. I was talking during the Arizona-Utah handicap about why Arizona's passing offense matches up really well with Utah's pass defense because they have the offensive line for the pass rush. And the long stuff that Utah takes away, Arizona's not looking for that anyway. They can attack the weakness of it. I think Fafita's passing yardage number is set way too low. That's another one I'm pretty confident in the over. I think he was pulling up the number that I saw. Let's see. I think he was in the 230s, mid 230s. I think Fafita gets over that. And I think that there's going to be some success through the air for Arizona. So that would be one other one that I would toss out as far as that goes. But Addison Estrenga remains my favorite player prop today. And we're going to have some big Deke energy going on. Mike Farrell, as Iowa takes out Illinois.
Ranger. I mean, it's not a bad pick.
So that's what we're going. And guys, that is all the time that we have for today. Thank you again for joining us on our last full slate of college football Saturday. We will be back next week. We have Friday games next week. Of course, we have the Egg Bowl, as always, on Thanksgiving. But we'll have a lot of stuff to get into on the Saturday card. But I'm very excited for this one, last full one of the season, as I mentioned. Thanks again for joining us. That's Mike Farrell. I'm Thor Nystrom. We'll see you again next week. Let's go cash some tickets.